what's going on. Did you see what's going on? Obviously, you've seen what's going on in California. But the governor gave this creepy speech where he was talking about speculators coming in and talking about what to do with the land of all these homes that have been burnt down while it's still only 6% contained. And he did this little dance like, I've been talking with these, with the governor of Hawaii about what to do. We've got some ideas.
I mean, I've got questions, sir. I don't find you to be a truth teller. Based on a long history.
Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly just teamed up for a no-holds-barred verbal smackdown on Gavin Newsom that left his signature slicked-back image and policies reeling. Rogan led the charge with a mix of unfiltered astonishment and biting wit, roasting Newsom's glossy, Hollywood-style leadership with the precision of a stand-up surgeon. Then came Kelly, cutting in with the sharpness of a seasoned litigator, tearing through his political track record like it was Exhibit A in a case against performative governance. From pandemic blunders to classroom ideologies spiraling out of control, they painted Newsom as the poster child for polished ambition masking messy realities.
The governor down in Hawaii, you had some ideas around some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in, buying up properties and the like. So we're already working with our legal teams to move those things forward, and we'll be presenting those in a matter of days, not just weeks.
With a big smile on his face. Look at the little wiggle he does with his shoulders. Speculator, watch this. Talking to John. Look at this little wiggle. It's excited about the possibilities of speculators coming in. And he's saying we're move forward. We're going to move forward on that. These people lost their homes. A lot of those people don't even have fire insurance because the fire insurance pulled out.
Dignity. That's what I was missing. There was no dignity. It just looked like a man desperate for attention. And whenever DeSantis was scoring points on him, he would interrupt over and over to try to talk over the points as just that's like a middle school debate tactic, which is pathetic and
Joe Rogan leaned into his mic with the intensity of a man who just watched a spaceship land and outstepped Gavin Newsom, slicker than a car commercial and twice as polished. The mere mention of Newsom's name pulled an incredulous grin from Rogan, like someone trying to process a fever dream with a double espresso in hand. No build-up was needed. Just hearing California's governor launched him into an unscripted tirade, raw, fiery, and laced with disbelief. To Rogan, Newsom isn't just a politician, he's a walking billboard for optics over authenticity. A masterclass in performance dressed up as leadership, delivered with the confidence of someone who thinks their own reflection deserves applause.
To these illegals who are now getting Medicaid in California, thanks to him. Illegals. So this guy's priorities are not with keeping people safe at all. He doesn't care about the crime, about the illegals, and obviously not about the fires, which after the fact, again, hey, sure, so could somebody let me know how that...
He kicked things off with the most obvious target, the hair. Rogan couldn't help but laugh, not out of amusement, but from the sheer absurdity of its perfection. He quipped that Newsom's hair looked like it had been lacquered in place with a mix of industrial-strength gel and raw presidential ambition. If you dropped the guy into a Category 5 hurricane, Rogan said, buildings might crumble, trees would uproot, but that hair? Untouched, it wouldn't even flinch. It was like the follicular version of diplomatic immunity. But the joke ran deeper. That glossy helmet wasn't just vanity, it was a metaphor, sculpted, immaculate, immune to mess. A symbol of a man so curated, he seemed sealed off from the chaos he was supposed to navigate.
Newsom either. Nobody believes in that guy. That guy's a f***ing con man. Everything he did in California, from trying to mandate vaccines for kids to being caught public without a mask and lying about the fact that he was outdoors. Yeah. Nobody believes in that guy. He's just a politician. Just a stone-cold, narrative-driven politician. Nobody thinks he's a real human. Whether you like Trump or not, whether you think he's corrupt or not, that's a human being. You know what that guy is. Same thing with RFK Jr. Whether you believe that he's correct about vaccines or whether you believe his policies would be effective, and that's a human being.
Then came the pandemic, and with it, a shift in Rogan's tone that carried the unmistakable edge of betrayal. The kind of outrage that only festers when hypocrisy smacks you in the face. He dissected Newsom's lockdown logic like a surgeon fueled by frustration, every incision revealing contradictions. One moment, Newsom was the face of strict enforcement, shutting down businesses, barring kids from classrooms, and silencing church bells in the name of safety. The next, he spotted whining and dining, mask-free, at one of California's most exclusive restaurants, elbow to elbow with lobbyists, while ordinary families were stuck reheating spaghetti in silence, trying to celebrate birthdays through glitchy Zoom calls. Rogan painted the moment like a twisted dystopian sketch. The governor feasting in a candlelit tower, while the rest of the state microwaved scraps and sanitized despair.
We begin with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who spent the weekend trying to avoid responsibility as the fires were still burning by dropping by the Pod Save America podcast for an attempt to clean up his own image.
Know the answers. So I'm the governor of California. I want to know the answer. I've got that question. I can't tell you about how many people, what happened. My own team saying what happened, and I want to get the answers. And
you're the governor.
Rogan tore into the baffling logic of shutting down beaches and outdoor gyms, like sunlight and fresh air had suddenly become public enemy number one. He didn't hold back, saying it felt less like science and more like stagecraft. In Rogan's words, Newsom seemed obsessed with appearances. If it looked like leadership, sounded like leadership, and could rack up retweets by lunchtime, it passed the Gavin test. Never mind the fallout. While paddleboards collected dust and parks were taped off like crime scenes, livelihoods were evaporating, kids were falling behind screens instead of learning behind desks, and mental health took a nosedive. But hey, at least the press conferences had great lighting and the right shade of blue behind the podium. Then Rogan turned his attention to California's homelessness crisis, and the frustration practically vibrated through the mic. He shook his head like a man staring at a jigsaw puzzle made entirely of broken promises. Major cities, he said, had become dystopian landscapes, lined with tents, littered with needles, and shadowed by the stench of neglect. It looked less like a state in progress and more like a Mad Max reboot, if the set design included compost bins and press conferences. And yet, Newsom continued claiming things were getting better. Rogan questioned how billions of taxpayer dollars could disappear into the problem while the streets only grew more chaotic. He didn't call it compassion, he called it incompetence dressed up in empathy's costume. And according to Rogan, Gavin Newsom wasn't just involved. He was the leading man in what he dubbed the longest-running failure theater in the country. Then came the hypocrisy in core. Newsom, the self-styled eco-warrior, jet-setting to climate summits with the frequency of a rock star on tour. Rogan mocked the spectacle, how the man warning about rising sea levels was simultaneously expanding his beachfront estate.
We almost burned alive. The governor of California. Take a listen.
We went up to one of the canyons on the fire, sitting there feeling we're a good quarter mile away. I'm not making this up, video to bear it out. All of a sudden, we see an ember, hits the tree goes on fire, 100 seconds. God is my witness, may have been 90 seconds. The house is in flames. I have embers of flames. They're taking it off my hair, and we're running back into the car. Winds are swirling around. Garbage cans were in the air, and we were getting the hell out of there.
Okay, why is he saying as God is my witness and I'm not making this up before he tells the story? Truly, like...
Rogan painted Gavin Newsom as a walking contradiction in designer shoes, always ready for a photo op beside a shiny new solar panel, while the rest of the state stumbled through rolling blackouts, historic droughts, and bureaucratic red tape so tangled it sent even Tesla packing for Texas. And Rogan loved that part. He rattled off the exodus like it was a graduation ceremony for billion-dollar brainpower. Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard, one by one, waving goodbye to California's promise. According to Rogan, it felt like watching all the smart kids leave the party while Gavin stayed behind, spinning records at a prom no one RSVP'd to. He mocked Newsom for talking about California like it was a progressive paradise, when in reality it looked more like a cautionary tale with palm trees and a really aggressive tax code. Then Rogan turned to those taxes. How could the state with the highest tax rates still deliver some of the worst infrastructure in the country? Potholes that could swallow a Prius, energy grids flickering like cheap horror effects, and water restrictions in a state bordered by the ocean. Californians, he said, were shelling out luxury-level dollars for services that felt like they were managed by a discount startup staffed by confused philosophy majors.
Leaders saying what's going on. Our state,
and you weren't getting straight answers from
I was getting
leaders.
different answers. When you start getting different answers, then I'm not getting the actual story.
So you decided the thing to do would be to go on Pod Save America to talk about it, because it's, in the end, it's all about you. This is another David Muir, folks. He is just as vain and worried about his image in the middle of this emergency as David Muir with his little fake fireman's jacket and clothes.
And just when it seemed Rogan had emptied the clip, he pivoted straight into California's social policies. With the kind of intensity you'd expect from someone watching their home state morph into a real-time experiment in ideological chaos. He railed against the rebranding of basic terms, the classroom agendas that felt more like sociology lectures than education, and the criminal justice policies that, in his words, had turned shoplifting into a casual afternoon activity. It was as if the state had handed over the reins to a focus group of over-caffeinated TikTok influencers, with Gavin Newsom cast as their glossy-haired spokesperson. That smug, rehearsed cadence, like he was voicing over a luxury EV ad, made Rogan wince. He didn't think Newsom spoke to Californians. He thought he performed for them. Then came Megyn Kelly, scalpel in hand, dissecting his obsession with image. Newsom, she said, didn't sound like a leader. He sounded like a man who hadn't pumped his own gas since the iPhone 3. She compared listening to him to being trapped in a motivational seminar, where the speaker confuses slogans for strategy and smugness for strength. To her, Gavin wasn't a governor, he was a brand. Every gesture choreographed, every phrase packaged for a press release. And while he mastered the art of looking effective, she argued, he completely missed the mark on being effective.
I addressed Gavin Newsom personally. He follows me, so I tagged him. And I'm going to be honest, I begged him to please stop this for all the reasons stated on our YouTube feed. And he didn't get back to me. But I think I was shooting at the wrong public official who...
Then she turned to his COVID track record, but with a sharpened edge and a different flavor. To her, Newsom didn't wield emergency powers to protect the public. He used them to expand his reach, micromanage behavior, and dominate the narrative. What started as public health orders quickly morphed into lifestyle mandates, rules for the masses, with VIP exceptions quietly carved out for himself and his inner circle. She painted California under his watch as a state turned upside down. Repeat offenders walked free while hardworking citizens felt like they were the ones under surveillance. Petty theft practically became legal tender, and law enforcement, handcuffed by politics, was vilified by lawmakers who never had to navigate the neighborhoods their policies destabilized. Kelly didn't just criticize, she dissected. His public safety stance. Performative. His education policies. A bureaucratic maze. His housing plans. More press release than plan. Each point she hit felt like a courtroom cross-examination, clear, biting, and impossible to dodge. And through it all, she argued, Newsom wasn't held accountable, not because he was effective, but because he spoke the language of elite media, checking all the right boxes while failing the people living between the headlines.
Governor Gavin Newsom told the Los Angeles Times Panera would not be exempt from the law. The spokesperson also did not acclaim the Bloomberg piece, which cited sources close to the matter that Newsom pushed for an exemption that applies to businesses that bake bread and sell it as a standalone item, calling the report absurd. So is it a fake story?
Or is it something that they
might have corrected
course quickly? Yeah.
And she didn't pull any punches. Kelly zeroed in on Newsom's relentless grandstanding, his habit of invoking Florida and Texas like political voodoo dolls, dragging them into speeches as if saying their names could magically excuse California's unraveling. Instead of governing his own state, she argued, he seemed more interested in clout chasing on social media, trading sound bites for solutions and snark for strategy. It wasn't leadership, it was influencer cosplay with a government budget. She accused him of chasing the national spotlight while ignoring the fires smoldering in his own backyard. Literally and figuratively. While homelessness soared, schools faltered, and crime crept into neighborhoods, he was busy firing off tweets comparing himself to Ron DeSantis. Then came the takedown of his supposed relatability. Kelly mocked his awkward attempts to connect with everyday Americans, claiming if you dropped him into a roadside diner with a menu and a map, he'd call for a press secretary before ordering a coffee. His worldview, she said, was pre-packaged by consultants and poll-tested in echo chambers. But the most scathing line, she said Newsom wasn't dangerous because he was cruel. He was dangerous because he believed his own headlines. That charisma was a substitute for competence. That optics could override outcomes. He wasn't just performing politics, he was the performance.
And he got out there with his bazooka and was like, I solved this problem, and you governors better freaking go along or you're gonna get it. And I'm not kidding around. I'll read you what he posted. Stand by. It's amazing. Okay, he posts the following. California, under the leadership of radical left Democrat Gavin Newsom, continues to illegally allow men to play.
As Rogan and Kelly finally set down their verbal torches, one theme had been scorched into the conversation. Gavin Newsom wasn't just acting as a governor, he had become a symbol. A polished emblem of political pageantry, backed by buzzwords and Instagram-filtered governance. Kelly tore into the narrative that California's education system was somehow leading the nation, saying it looked less like a model and more like a slow-motion academic collapse dressed up in progressive catchphrases. Under Newsom, she argued, classrooms had transformed into ideological battlegrounds, where critical thinking took a backseat to cultural signaling. Kids were struggling to read at grade level, but could recite a string of identity acronyms longer than their vocabulary lists. Instead of math and science, they were being fed lectures about systems they couldn't define and theories they couldn't spell. She mocked Newsom's proud declarations about educational equity, while parents across the state were pulling their kids from public schools faster than administrators could design new PowerPoint slides. What families wanted was literacy and math. What they got was a glossy brochure on emotional sensitivity and a fresh hike in property taxes.
The thing is, how is his hair? Did it or did it not have embers in it? And you tell me what the answer is to my question about what the press would be doing to Ron DeSantis if he swung by the Ruthless podcast in the middle of the hurricane. The fires are still burning. There's zero purpose in going on Pod Save America other than to burnish his own image.
And of course, that's all he cares about, right? That's why he tells this harrowing.
Joe Rogan jumped back in, picking up right where he left off. This time with a sharper edge and a grin that said he was just getting warmed up. He doubled down on what he called Newsom's uncanny ability to rebrand failure as innovation. Every crisis in California, Rogan joked, came pre-packaged with a shiny slogan, as if Gavin were trying to market collapse for social media clout. Power outages? Not blackouts, energy transitions. Crime spikes? Not chaos. Justice reform. Tax hikes? Nope, those were just investments in the future. Rogan laughed, saying only Newsom could preside over grid failure and rising crime, while smiling like he was unveiling a new ride at Disneyland. Then came the punchline. The idea that Newsom believed this resume of ruin actually qualified him to run for president. Rogan imagined the pitch. Newsom, sleeves rolled up, rehearsed grin locked in, trying to sell his national vision like a timeshare rep standing knee-deep in floodwater. Vote for me, Rogan mocked, and I'll bring California's magic to your backyard. He shook his head and delivered the gut punch with perfect timing. If that doesn't terrify people, nothing will.